Hello, everybody. This is Mr. Dauval. I'm making a video for you about a week's worth of drama. Okay, where I'm going to focus while I talk to you on Romeo and Juliet and our study guide. Okay, those will be the main things I talk about. Also want to draw your attention that you should have a pretty good idea of where we're at based on our calendar that I gave you at the beginning of the class. Okay. The only thing I need to point out is because of the shift in students not coming and the COVID schedule and all of that, we're off where I wanted to be. We're like a week off, and I'm considering just skipping the raisin in the sun bit or doing it at the end. So I'm just giving you a heads up there. Okay. If you look in Summit at the announcements page, you will see, let me find that, an announcement that looks like this. Class goals for December 6th to December 10th. That's the day I'm recording this. Drama term 2. Yes, Philly. Okay, do now. Read lines from Romeo and Juliet. Did that earlier in the week. And play Cranium for the second half. I actually shifted it to wah. But anyhow, that part doesn't matter as much. But I do want you to know, for the first part anyway, that we were reading lines from the play, and I put a bunch of lines up on the screen, and I had everybody pick one and just read it and see how it felt. Things like Romeo, oh Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name. You go through a line like that. What comes to mind for you? Okay. We did a lot of watching of Romeo and Juliet film. Okay. We watched and read and discussed acts 2 through 4. We actually got up to the beginning of act 4. So if you can get up, completely finish act 3, you'll be in good shape. Okay. The link for the film is right here. So if you click on that link that says YouTube, watch, you're going to see the link for the film. Okay. And it's the same film, but I purchased the ad-free one that I've been showing in class. So the one that you have will have commercials and all of that, but it's just the same thing. If you are at all behind, please get on this and get caught up. It's the kind of thing you can put on and just listen to on your phone. Like put in your headphones, like you guys got your noise canceling headphones and all that, and just listen to it. Okay. You don't have to watch the whole thing, but you listen to it, hear the story, look at the parts that might be confusing to you, then you'll understand. Okay. So go back here. Complete study guide, which most of you have, and I also put it in Summit, Acts 2 through 4, or at least up to 4. Checkpoint 1, play exploration. We didn't actually work on this together in class, but I went over it a couple times, and I'm going to go over it again today. So I just want to show you some things. In fact, I'll go over that. Yeah, I'll go over that after the reading. Okay. Actually, I'll go over it first because it's shorter. The text for the play is at sparknotes.com. The same exact text with the same exact translation is in our book. So please feel free to use that there. I made myself a little PowerPoint here to keep me focused. Here's the same goals. Film. I'll come back to that in just a moment. We'll talk about checkpoint 1. It says play exploration. Identify 2 themes in the play and describe how they occur in the play. See Chapter 8 themes, motifs, and symbols in our book for suggested themes. If you look in Summit, you will see this page here. Shakespeare from page to stage, Checkpoint 1. In this checkpoint, you will be reading William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, working with your teacher and classmates to understand and analyze it. To complete the checkpoint, provide at least 2 potential theme statements for your play in the space below. Theme statements are created by stating the specific theme is present in the play and describing how. For example, in the play, the theme of forced love is prominent. The major characters attempt to force everything to make it so that Romeo and Juliet can be together. People are killed, and then the teens kill themselves. It is a mess. Now for yours, you just need to put the cursor, theme statement 1, theme statement 2, type something up. Now, if you have a book with you at home, if you go to chapter 8, themes, motifs, and symbols, you will see there's a list of themes for you to access. Forcefulness of love. Love is a cause of violence. Individual versus society. There's a few. These same resources are at the SparkNotes webpage if you just click on themes, motifs, and symbols. All right, now I want to go back to the play and the study guide. Now, in class, last week, everyone went over Act 1 together, and I went over it again. So I'm not going to go over all of it here, all right? I'll do it quickly for those of you that are behind. And as I go, feel free to pause the video and write down, fill in your stuff in your study guide, okay? So Act 1, Scene 1. In the prologue, what does the chorus say will happen to the 2 lovers? They will take their life. 2. What does Prince Aeschylus say he will do to anyone who fights in the future? He says your lives will pay the forfeit. They will be killed. 3. How does Benvolio say the fighting began? He said some Capulets came along, some of our Montagues came along, they started fighting. He says I tried to stop it, then Tibble came in and drew his sword at me. So he's just describing the back and forth. Capulet started, Benvolio tries to stop it, and Tibble forces it to happen. 4. According to Benvolio, how has Romeo been acting recently? Romeo is described as very gloomy and melancholy. His name is Romeo, rhymes with woe, which means sadness. Number 5. What remedy does Benvolio suggest for Romeo's problem once they've been talking? He tells he tells Romeo to forget to think of this girl Rosaline that he's in love with. And Romeo's like, tell me how I should forget to think. And he says, come out with me and I'll show you some other beautiful girls. Act 1, Scene 2. We meet Capulet and Paris. What does Capulet tell Paris he will have to do in order to marry Juliet? He says, come to my house. Woo her. Hang out with her. See some other girls too. And if you like other girls, hang out with them. But he says, I will not force her to get married. She's too young. I'm going to let her decide. Number 7. How does the servant ask Romeo to read the lists of guests? Why does the servant ask Romeo to read the lists of guests who are invited to the party at the Capulets? The serving man, Peter, does not know how to read. So it creates a little bit of comedy here. He asks Romeo, do you know how to read? And Romeo reads it, and he finds out that this woman, Rosaline, that he's obsessed with is going to be at Capulet's party. Number 8, what makes Romeo decide to go to the party? Who does he want to see there? I just answered that. Romeo goes to see this woman, Rosaline, whose name is spelled like Rosa, L-I-N-E. So, or Rosa, L-I-N-E. R-O-S-A-L-I-N-E. Act 1, Scene 3. In Scene 3, we learn that Juliet is how old? She is described as being not yet 14, so we believe she's 13. 10. What does Lady Capulet want to talk to Juliet about? Marriage. She says, marry. Marriage is the very theme I came to talk of. And she says, daughter Juliet, How stands your disposition to be married? And Juliet says, it isn't for number 11. She said, it is an honor I have dreamt not of. That's her attitude towards marriage. She's never thought about it before. And her mother says, could you like of Paris's love? And Juliet says, I'll look to like if looking liking move. In other words, I'll check him out, see if I like him. Act 1, Scene 4, we meet Benvolio and Romeo and Queen and Mercutio, and Mercutio goes off about dreams and how they're the children of an idle brain, and he introduces us to a famous mythological figure here named Queen Mab, famous only because of this story. And question asks, what feelings about dreams does Mercutio express in his Queen Mab monologue? Basically, Mercutio describes this spider figure coming into people's brains or going around their noses or their ears, whatever, and giving people dreams and ideas, giving lovers dreams of love, fighters dreams of killing people, lawyers dreams of getting money from people. And it's sort of about like when people are focused on a certain thing, they will dream about that certain thing. They will be blinded by that thing, by their dreams. And this seems like it doesn't matter, except for the fact that what he says about Queen Mab is basically true of everyone in the story, all the major characters. That people that are in love get lost in it. People that are fighters get lost in the fighting. It's the same kind of thing. Number 13, at the end of the scene 4, what does Romeo fear? He says, I fear for my mind misgives some consequence yet hanging in the stars. Shall fearfully begin with this night's revels and the untimely end of my life. Or I forget how he says it. Like, something like that. That if I go to this party, I'm going to die. And he's right. Just not exactly how he thinks. Act 1, Scene 5, at the party. Number 14, how does Romeo react when he first sees Juliet? To what does he compare her? He says that she teaches torches to burn bright. He compares her to light. He says she looks like a jewel on an Ethiopian's ear, like a beautiful gem on an Ethiopian's ear. Too rich. Okay, light, sparkling. 15. How does Tybalt react to the news that Romeo is at the party? How does Capulet react to Tybalt's rage? Tybalt overhears Romeo going on about how beautiful Juliet is, and he's like, what is this? This person sounds like a Montague coming to my party to basically mock us and scorn us and make fun of us, and he's going to kill him right away. Capulet gets involved, and he's like, hey, where are you rushing off to? Wherefore storm you? And he's like, there's a Montague at our party, uncle. It's a shame. And he's like, I don't want you to do him any disparagement at my party. Don't you mess with him here. Maybe somewhere else, but not here. 16. How does Juliet react to Romeo in their first meeting? She is, just like him, awestruck. And she tells him after they kiss, you kiss by the book. 17. How does Juliet feel when she hears that Romeo is a Montague? She famously says, my only love sprung from my only hate, too early known and too unknown too late. She's not allowed to associate with Montagues. She was raised to hate Montagues. So imagine what that would be like to realize, and Romeo has a similar reaction, but his is very brief. He's just like, what? She's a Capulet. All right. Act 2. So we went over all of this week in class. Number 1, who do Mercutio and Benvolio think Romeo is with? For them, he ditched them at the party for Rosaline, so they think he's off somewhere with Rosaline. Then it jumps to scene 2, and Romeo says, they jest at scars that never felt a wound, because he's there to see the new girl of his dreams, Juliet. He climbs over an orchard wall and goes outside of Juliet's window, and he climbs up to the edge, and he's on the stage that we're watching. He's predicted as being, or he's depicted as being below this balcony looking up at her. Number 2, how does Romeo talk about Juliet? What are some of the similes and metaphors that he uses? He says many things, things like, soft, what light through yonder window breaks. It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Come, fair Juliet, and kill the envious moon. He says she's, again, like light, bright, beautiful. She's sparkling. He also says, ah, look at her lean upon that hand. If only I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek. Corny, but this is what he does. Okay, he's just like, ah, so beautiful. Number 3, how does Juliet want Romeo, or why does Juliet want Romeo to have some other name? She famously says, what's, wait, Romeo, O Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name, and I'll no longer be a Capulet. What's in a name, nor any other part? I forget exactly the words. She says, what, a rose by any other name could smell as sweet, she says. She wants him to have another name because if he wasn't a Montague, they could openly date. And everything would have been different in the story. There wouldn't be a story. If he was, Romeo Philadelphian, doesn't matter. Like, they would have been able to be together. But because he's a Montague, because she's a Capulet, everything is going to go down. Number 4. When Juliet discovers Romeo at her balcony, what does she fear? She tells him, well, one, she thinks there's a stalker who stumbles upon my counsel, she says. And then she says, is this Romeo? I think I know the voice. And then she says, why did you come here? The orchard walls are high and hard to climb, and this place is death if they find you here. If any of the Capulet guards find him, he will be killed. Number 5, what are Juliet's reservations about rushing things with Romeo? Romeo says things like, oh, will thou leave me so unsatisfied tonight? And she's like, what satisfaction can you have tonight? And he wants to exchange vows. He wants to get married. She's like, oh, this is fast. He says, I swear by the moon. She's don't swear by the moon. The inconstant moon, it's always changing. Why would you swear by the moon? Number 6. What do they plan to do at the end of the scene? They plan to get married. And Romeo says, at what time tomorrow shall I send a message to you? They agree upon 9 o'clock. And Juliet, you'll find out later, she's going to send the nurse to send a message to Romeo. Act 2, Scene 3, we meet Friar Lawrence, the guy who is going to try to help everything and ruin everything. Number 7, what does Friar Lawrence say about the power of the small flower he holds? He talks about these flowers and how they have the power to heal and the power to make poison also. And this is interesting because this is what he's going to do later. He's going to make a potion for Juliet to pretend that she's dead, have her pass out, and different than what are beside that, Romeo is going to get a poison and will kill himself. So this is some foreshadowing for that and a little bit of dramatic irony that will be discussed later. Number 8, what is Friar Lawrence's reaction to Romeo's news? He says, Friar Lawrence says, how's it going with Rosaline? And Romeo's like, oh, I've forgotten that name, and that name's Woe. And he says, I am in love with the rich Capulet's daughter, Juliet. And Friar Lawrence is like, Holy St. Francis, what a change is here. Wow, this is big. A Capulet in love with a Montague in love with a Capulet. He's shocked. Number 9, Why does Friar Lawrence agree to help the two? What does he hope to accomplish? He says at the end of the scene, I will help you so that we perhaps can create an alliance between the two families and to turn the household rancor, the fighting and the hatred, to pure love. So he's hoping to bring the two families together. Act 2, Scene 4. Why has Tybalt sent a letter to Romeo's house? What type of letter is it? This is discussed by Mercutio and Benvolio in the streets. And the letter is a challenge, to fight. Tybalt wants to fight. He wants to kill Romeo for having disrespected the Capulets by coming to the party. He doesn't know anything about Juliet. He just wants to fight him for coming to the party. Number 11. The nurse shows up and she talks to Romeo. What warning does the nurse give to Romeo? She says, if you should be double dealing with her, you better not lead her into a fool's paradise. That would be a gross way of behaving, she says. That you better not be taking advantage of my young lady. Number 12. What message does Romeo give the nurse to tell Juliet? He says, tell her to come to Shrift. Shrift is another word for confession at church, and there she will be shrived and married. And the nurse is very delighted about this. They're going to be married in secret at the church by Friar Lawrence. Act 2, Scene 5. Why is Juliet annoyed at the beginning of Scene 5? How does the nurse tease her? Juliet is anxious to receive news about what's going on with Romeo and what's going to happen, and she's just like all over the place. And when the nurse comes in, the nurse delays. She's like, oh, I gotta sit. Oh, my back, my bones, and where's your mother? And Juliet's like, what do you mean, where's my mother? You went out to get the news. Tell me the news. And the nurse laughs. They have a funny moment, and she tells her that she's going to be married. Act 2, Scene 6 is the marriage scene. What fears do Friar Lawrence express in Scene 6? This is part of the dramatic irony. He says, these violent delights have violent ends. That when people rush, he says, wisely they go, those fast that stumble slow, something like that. The people that rush mess things up. We know, the audience knows, this goes into number 15, what's going to happen. What is an example of dramatic irony from Act 2? Friar Lawrence gives us a couple. That he is hinting at what is coming. The audience knows. We know that the kids are going to die. We see them getting married. We see all these plans being made. We know they're going to kill themselves. We know what's going to happen. They don't. That's dramatic irony. When Friar Lawrence says people that rush things mess it up, we know what's going to happen. That's dramatic irony. 14, an example of foreshadowing from Act 2. There's so many, but when Friar Lawrence talks about the flowers and the herbs, that's foreshadowing of the potions that will come later. When Juliet and Romeo talk about how much they love each other, this foreshadows the intensity of what's going to happen and also how things are going to fail later. All right, Act 3, Scene 1. We got through Act 3 this week. I'll go over that. This is seeming long. Just pause your video, come back to it. But I'm going to keep going to get this done. Act 3, Scene 1. Why has Tybalt come looking for Romeo? Well, remember, there was a challenge. He wants to fight him. Number 2, what does Mercutio do? What is his motivation? So when Tybalt challenges Romeo, he says, Romeo, the name I bear, the love I bear thee, can afford no better term than this. Thou art a villain. To people in Elizabethan times, the word villain was very disrespectful. It was like saying something about your mom. It was like saying something about like the worst thing somebody could say to you, super disrespectful, call somebody a villain. There's a couple things like that. Calling somebody a villain, biting thumbs at people. These are things we don't really understand necessarily in our current day and age, but these people thought it was disrespectful. And you could imagine, like, you might laugh if somebody called you a villain, but if somebody said, you're a villain, you're an evil, corrupt person, might be like, hey, wait a minute, that's not who I am. So Mercutio, number 2, hears this, and he hears Romeo say, Tybalt, the love I bear thee does much excuse the appertaining rage to such a greeting. Villain am I not. Therefore, until thou, he says, dear Capulet, which name I tender as dearly as mine own, until you know the reason of my love, be satisfied. And Romeo is talking about Juliet. He just got married to Tybalt's cousin. None of them know this. Mercutio hears this. He's like, what in the hell? Why is Romeo taking this villain? And he's telling him he loves him. And what the hell? So Mercutio loses it. He gets mad. He challenges Romeo to a fight. He will not be, he cannot stand this disrespect. Number 3. Describe what happens in the fight. How does Romeo accidentally make things worse? The fight at first is kind of playful. Tybalt and Mercutio pushing each other, stabbing in the direction of each other. In the original, they would have had swords. In the film I'm showing you guys, they have knives. And it's not that serious. They're just kind of screwing with each other. But they can't fight. Romeo knows this. He knows that they'll be put to death, and he says, "Stop! Put up your weapons. Forbear this outrage. The prince will doom you death if you're caught." And he gets between them, and there's this thing that happens where Mercutio's on one side of him, and Tybalt is rushing towards him, and Romeo's like, "Stop!" And Tybalt stabs Mercutio under Romeo's arm. So it wasn't Romeo's fault, but he accidentally makes it worse. Mercutio starts joking at first, and then he announces that he's dying and that they've made worms meat of him and all this stuff. Number 4, what does Mercutio mean when he says, "A plague of both your houses"? Describe the moment. Like I say, first it's kind of silly, and then all of a sudden it gets tragic. And he's like, "Oh, they've made worms meat of me. Take me into a house, Benvolio. Faint. A plague of both your houses. Curse both the Capulets and the Montagues. Curse them." Because if it were not for the conflict, this is how he sees it. If it were not for the conflict, he wouldn't have been there. A student in class today pointed out it was his own damn fault for getting in the fight. Very true. But this is what he means. Number 5. What is the outcome of the fight between Romeo and Tybalt? What punishment does Aeschylus give Romeo? When Romeo realizes that Mercutio is dying and then is dead, he blows it. Blows a fuse. He loses it. He takes a weapon and he rushes after Tybalt, and they have a much more violent, much more aggressive fight, and Romeo kills him very quickly. The prince is called to the scene. It's like, who started this bloody fray? The prince is concerned not only because they're killing each other, but because his cousin is now dead. The prince's cousin is Mercutio. The prince's other cousin in the story is Paris. That's important later. So, knowing that Romeo didn't really mean to start the fight, or didn't really mean for this to happen, the prince punishes him by banishing him rather than saying he would be put to death. Act 3, Scene 2. The nurse returns from the scene where she's not in the fight, but she comes back and she says she comes in, and Juliet is excited. She just got married. She's delighted. She's thinking about Romeo and the stars and horses in the sky, carrying them off to love and all this beautiful stuff. And the nurse comes in and she's crying and she's like, "He's dead, he's dead, he's dead. Oh, weary day." And Juliet's like, "Who's dead? Who's dead?" And the nurse starts saying, "Oh, Romeo, it was Romeo." And Juliet's losing it. She's like, "Oh my God, my husband is now dead." And then she finds out, no. Romeo killed Juliet's cousin. Initially, Juliet is angry about this, and she describes him as a serpent with a flowery face, that he's an angel and demon. And then the nurse says, "Romeo will be shamed. Shame come to Romeo." And Juliet snaps at the nurse and says, "Blistered be thy tongue for such a wish, for shame is ashamed to sit upon his brow." Something like that. She snaps at the nurse. She will not hear the nurse disrespecting Romeo. She defends him because he's her husband, even though he killed her beloved cousin, Tibble. Number 7, at the end of scene 2, what does Juliet ask the nurse to do? She asks the nurse to give Romeo a ring. She says, give him this ring to let him know how I'm feeling. And also take the cords and set up a ladder. And they're setting up a ladder so that Romeo can get up to her room and they can have their wedding night. In scene 3, Romeo gets the news about the banishment. Number 8, what is Romeo's reaction when Friar Lawrence tells him that Aeschylus has banished him? Romeo says he will kill himself. He is pissed. He's upset. He's distraught. He's like, no, say death, not banishment. He cannot stand this idea that he would have to leave his town of Verona. And he finds out he has to go move to this place called Mantua, which is town next over. He pulls out a knife at one point and says, like, where's my name? I will kill it. I will cut it out of me. And Friar Lawrence is like, for number 9, his reaction to Romeo is, hold thy desperate hand. And he lists a bunch of things that are actually going well for Romeo. He says, Tibble would have killed you, but you killed him. Aren't you happy? The law was supposed to kill you, but it didn't kill you. Aren't you happy? Your wife is still alive, and you can have an opportunity to be with her. Aren't you happy? Okay, and he comes up with a plan that Romeo's going to go meet Juliet for their wedding night. Act 3, scene 4, it's very short. Paris is having another conversation with Capulet. In scene 4, what does Capulet tell Paris? What is scheduled to happen next Thursday? How is this different than what he told Paris in Act 1, scene 2? So what's different here is that Capulet tells Paris, I will marry my daughter to you on Thursday. This is very different than what happened before. It's not explicitly stated, but it seems like this could be a political move. A member of the Capulet family, Tibble, killed a member of the prince's family, Mercutio. If Lord Capulet has his daughter marry Paris, a member of the prince's family, that will bond them together, will create a union. It will be a political strength for them. Okay. Everyone in Shakespeare's day would have understood this. The Queen of England would have understood it. The later King James that might have seen it would have understood this. So this was a powerful point in the play. This, as you would imagine, makes it so that Juliet, who is already married, is going to be asked to marry somebody else, and she's not going to be happy about this. Scene 5 is the last moment that Romeo and Juliet have together, alive and awake. At the end of scene 5, why do Romeo and Juliet discuss whether it is morning or not? How do they use birds to decide whether it is morning or still night? Okay. If it's morning, Romeo has to leave. If it's night, he gets to continue to stay. So they talk. He's like, they hear bird sounds, and he's like, oh, it's, Juliet says, oh, don't leave yet. It's the nightingale, not the lark that's singing. And Romeo's like, it's the lark. I've got to go. The lark is the herald of the morning. The nightingale is for the night. I've got to go. If I stay, I can stay and die, or I can leave and live. And these opposing ideas again. Okay. Number 12. When asked why she's okay. I should also want to summarize the scene here. Romeo leaves, and Juliet, as he's leaving, imagines him dead in a tomb. And she says, oh, I feel like I see my love dead in a tomb. She's having a foreshadowing of finding him dead later in Act 5, Scene 3. Number 12. When asked why she's upset, Juliet speaks of Tybalt's loss. What is she really upset about? Explain her double meaning. Her mother comes in and starts talking about how terrible it is that Tybalt died and how terrible it is that this villain Romeo still is alive. And Juliet covers it up by saying, she says, yes, it's sad that Tybalt died, and I wish I could wreak my love on this guy Romeo. And she's like, sort of like, I wish I could like hurt him, but I want to touch him and feel him. A little double meaning in there. Number 13. What is Capulet's reaction when he learns that Juliet refuses to marry Paris? Line 149. In that moment, okay, perhaps for the political reasons which are not explicitly stated, Capulet loses it at Juliet, and he tells her, if you won't marry my friend on Thursday, get out of my house, I disown you, go be hanged, go beg, do whatever you have to do, you're not my daughter anymore. And she is distraught. She is distraught, as you can imagine. Her husband just got banished, her husband's been killed, or sorry, her husband's been banished for killing her cousin. She's being told she's supposed to marry somebody else. It's a lot of drama for a 13-year-old girl. 14. What does the nurse tell Juliet she should do? Now, this is a part where this, like, you can really feel Juliet's heart breaking. The nurse tells Juliet, well, Romeo's banished, and he did kill Tibble. He can't come back. Marry this guy, Paris. It's a good deal. It's a good idea. He'll take care of you. It's a good arrangement. Juliet is just, she's just like the color goes out of her face. And 15, she's so angry. Why is she so angry with the nurse? How does her attitude change? She says to the nurse, sarcastically, thou hast comforted me marvelous much. And she says, go tell my mother I'll get ready for the marriage. And the nurse kind of is like, oh, great, good idea. I'm glad you decided to do that. And the nurse leaves and she says, from now on, we are split apart. We are twain. Our souls are a twain, and we will never speak again. And Juliet will never speak to the nurse again. It is in scene 4 that she goes to see Friar Lawrence, or sorry, act 4, that she goes to Friar Lawrence and they come up with a plan. But we'll hold that off for next week. So remember to go on Summit, get the YouTube link for the film. The text of the play is on SparkNotes. The study guide itself is in Summit. You should be able to access that if you don't have yours at home. Okay. So what I would do if I didn't have my study guide and I didn't have a printer and I didn't, could just look at it online, I would just take a piece of loose leaf and just put like Act 3, Scene 4, number 10, put, what I think my answer is, and I can transfer it later. Okay. Okay. So, how do I stop presenting? Anyway, I'm about to end anyway. Thank you very much, folks. Those of you that are home with drama, you can always email me anything you need to do, okay? And I will get back to you. Have a great day. I'll see you next week. Come to class. Bye.